Welcome to the 86th episode of the Real Life Diabetes Podcast with today's guest, who's an integrative cannabis coach, amongst many other titles, Sarah MacLeod. If you're new to the show, welcome, and thanks for stopping by. My name is Amber Kluwer, and I'm the co-founder of the Diabetes Daily Grind and host of this, the Real Life Diabetes Podcast. I enjoy sharing my story and those of other people living their best life with this disease. Before we get started, I have a few quick announcements. Number one, today's podcast is brought to you by Gottlieb, maker of artisanal CBD-infused self-care products designed to engage the senses, ignite the spirit, and soothe the soul. Who doesn't need that? Crafted with USDA-certified organic hemp extract and free of synthetic fragrances, dyes, and preservatives, Gottlieb's products are as effective as they are luxurious. The fragrance profiles change seasonally, so there's always something new to explore. Yay! Use code DDG25 through the end of May 2020 and receive 25% off your first order. A link to Gottlieb is in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. If you're interested in getting involved or sponsoring an episode, please contact the DDG's newest team member, Cynthia Selt, Director of Partnerships and Development, at cynthia@diabetesdailygrind.com. Number two, there's nothing like sitting across from my podcast guest in person, but Zoom video will have to do for now. Head on over to the Diabetes Daily Grind YouTube channel to watch me interview my guest and be sure to subscribe so you'll be the first to know when I release a new episode. Number three, please click on the Amazon banner on the diabetesdailygrind.com website before ordering. It doesn't cost you a thing and throws a little change my way. Number four, I'm doing my best to put out a Facebook and or Instagram live feed each week sharing upcoming guests and exciting announcements. Your feedback is always welcome, so chime in if you have a question, thought, or idea. And finally, don't forget to love, like, share, and comment on all things social media. Sign up for the newsletter. Leave an iTunes review, please. I love them. And subscribe to the DDG YouTube channel. All right, everybody, enough rambling. Let's get started. How are you doing today?
Okay. How are you?
It's been an interesting day with blood sugar and all kinds of stuff. So I'm hanging in there, still rocking it, I guess.
Yeah. Same here. I know. Mine was just yelling at me to calibrate, and it says that I'm low, but I don't think I am. It's one of those.
Do what you need to do.
Yeah. I'll let you get us started here with anything that you need to go over first.
No, I'm good. This is in my mind, as you know, like we talked a while ago. It's almost been a month. There's just, I like your story, and it's, for me, the podcast is more of just having a happy hour or conversation with somebody.
Absolutely.
Because I sure miss them right now. I really miss the regular stuff like a happy hour, hanging out with your friends. So
I know it's been so long since I've seen like anyone. So.
How's your blood sugar? You good?
I'm 65. I'm gonna grab my little juice box right here.
Okay. This is real life diabetes, people. It does not stop for anything, including a podcast recording. While she is getting her juice box, I decided to eat real pizza for lunch. I am paying the consequences, both in my gallbladder and with my blood sugar. So we'll see how this goes. Got plenty of insulin on board, and hopefully that wave will flatten considerably.
Yeah.
So Sarah, I was just saying, as you're dealing with the low, I had pizza today, like real pizza, which is rare. I usually do like cauliflower crust and low carb, whatever. But today I just splurged and definitely paying for it. Definitely paying for it. It was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah.
That one splurge. And I know what's your goal blood sugar normally?
I actually prefer to be a little higher than other people. If I'm south of 200, I'm happy. Like I love to be like 160, 150, only because I feel like I go low so quickly, and I actually don't feel very well when I start to drop. I definitely feel the lows hit me hard. And with gastroparesis, it's such like you don't know when you're going to digest that final little bit of food. So for me, it's so difficult. So I guess I would say more south of 200 is very generous. I would say between like 120 and 140 is like that's my favorite spot to be.
I'm with you. My goal is 110. And, if I get below 90, I don't feel good. And it's weird and hard to describe. And then I'm like, I could train myself to feel better with those, but I haven't done that yet. So it's different for everybody. And I think that's one of the reasons I really like doing the podcast too, is because even though I say this all the time, we're all diagnosed with the same disease, we all manage it very differently. So are you good to continue the podcast, or we need to stop?
I'm actually, like I said, I'm actually fine. So today I really haven't eaten anything. My stomach hasn't been feeling that good the last few days. So I chose just today just to do water, a little bit of coffee. So on days like this, when I'm like I've probably been at 65 or 70 for probably a few hours even.
Right.
And ignoring my little thing to calibrate. I've been working away at my desk here. So I think I should be all set. I might sip on this little juice box if I start to feel anything, but luckily Dex is here and checking on me. So
it's always nice to have, Dexcom's got your back. Well, let's start with your diagnosis story.
Sure. So I was diagnosed when I was 15 years old. It was during my physical. So I went to my pediatrician's office with my mom, and we experienced, the routine of the physical visit. Luckily, I had a very thorough pediatrician, so she actually did a urine test and a finger stick, which, for me, I had grown up doing that. I had been going to that pediatrician my whole life. And I have since learned that that's not the standard practice for all pediatricians. So I always like to share that with anyone that I speak to, especially, women that might already be moms or they're going to be moms someday. Some of my peers, I've always added that to my diagnosis story, that I was surprised to learn that that's not the case at every office. So
why? Did you have a family history?
No. So actually it was just, funny. Oddly enough, the doctor who diagnosed me or believed that I could have diabetes, her name was Dr. Wright with a W. But honestly, she was always right about everything. Even, my younger brother actually had RSV as a baby, and, he almost died as an infant. And
wow.
Her diligence to the standard of care that she delivered to her patients was what actually saved my brother's life. So, we have always, really relied on her and really put a lot of our trust in her. And she was just that kind of doctor, was really ahead of the game. And maybe, I never got to have a conversation with her. Maybe there's more to that story. Maybe there's a reason why. Maybe she had already diagnosed a child with diabetes within her practice. That would be really interesting to actually find out. I've never even thought about that.
Keep me posted if you follow up with her, because I'm, one of the things I shake my fist all the time now is anybody that goes to the doctor, whether it's the ER or your GP, ask for a finger prick. I mean, there's no reason why that shouldn't be the standard care for everyone. Especially with 1 and 2 of us walking around, not us, we've already got diabetes, but for those who are pre-diabetic. But okay, so no family history. 15, you were 15. Do you know what your blood sugar was when she tested it?
I think I was only in the high 300s. I want to say 388. That's what I've always stuck with, that number.
Right. Okay, well then you didn't go into DKA, thankfully. Did you go immediately to Children's Hospital, or?
they wanted me to get in the car and go right away. However, my dad actually, and he was only 39 at the time, he had just come home after having bilateral knee replacement surgery. He was very young to have that done. And so my mom was, taking care of, 3 teenagers, a household, with trying to take care of the husband. And as I mentioned, my younger brother actually had almost passed away from RSV, and she believed it to be neglect due to Children's Hospital in Boston. Not to throw names out there, but she had a prejudice because of a personal experience. So we ended up going to New England Medical Center, Tufts Floating Hospital for Children, which luckily I'm near Boston. So there's, there was an abundance of choices of where we could go.
Lucky.
Yes, so very lucky. And the funny story about the whole thing was because my mom is such a nervous driver. My older brother, who's only like 18 months older, he had just got his permit, and he actually was the one to drive the car into the city with my dad with the knee replacements in the back with me, and it was a whole family affair. Never a dull moment in the MacLeod household.
Well, I got to say, and this is not a fair comparison, but whenever I was diagnosed, my nanny was with us because she helped take care of us. So my mom, my nanny, and my younger sister. So when they said, you've got to drive her immediately to Children's Hospital, or we're going to call an ambulance because my blood sugar was really high. We got in the car. She dropped off my nanny and my sister at an aunt's house en route to Oklahoma City. And I don't remember any of that, but just it changed everything right then, Family affair for sure. So no family history. Do you? I mean, everybody's got their conspiracy theory as to how and why they got type 1 diabetes. Were you sick as a kid?
As I've gone down this road a few times with trying to think of like, all right, illnesses or, even the connection to the mind-body connection, childhood experiences and trauma and that sort of thing, what can trigger a response within an individual. And most notably, I recall having Coxsackie virus that fall. So I had white spots like in my throat, and I actually had one like right on my lip. And I remember I had just started dating my high school boyfriend. I was 14 when we met, and I was horrified. I was like, this boy's not going to want to kiss me. I've got this thing on my lip. I don't even know where it's from. I've never seen anything like it. And, after having researched what could potentially happen because of Coxsackie virus, it appeared that type 1 diabetes was actually, the lesser of many evils that can happen. And as we're learning right now, with the virus that's been going on, you never know what's going to happen with an illness sometimes. Some people fare very well and some people don't. And it looks like Coxsackie can potentially be a trigger for that autoimmune response of type 1 diabetes.
That's interesting. I've never even heard of that. I'm going to have to do some research. I learned something new every day about autoimmune diseases, unfortunately, but it's nice to know. So let me see. Okay, so Sarah and I had a conversation, like I said, about a month ago, and you brought up the fact, and I never put these pieces together until you mentioned it, that I had reached out to you when we first started the blog to see about you being a guest writer. And if I remember correctly in the notes that I had, you said you weren't ready. You weren't ready to share your story. And so why is it now? Because you really blossomed in the diabetes online community and you're helping with so many things and so many groups. So why is it now that you've, I'm going to say, found your voice?
I think it just took me some time to realize that my story was worth sharing. There are so many stories out there, and what I learned that is everyone's story is worth sharing, really. Yeah. And that's kind of come full circle now. I try to highlight some stories of the women that I've met through some of the things that I put out there into the diabetes community as well. And I just think that, the more you start talking, at least I guess for me, the harder it is to get me to stop.
Yeah.
Just need that initial confidence boost. And I think, by finding my place within the peer support community, I think that's what allowed me to start to share my story more in person and with individuals that I was meeting. And that really inspired me to take it online and to kind of bigger and better places, I guess you could say.
Well, and in our conversation, obviously, previously, you mentioned the fact that, I don't know if it was a comment that someone made to you or what, but that you look healthy. Whatever. And you're living with chronic pain in addition to diabetes, and I think that's a lot of us are, it's a backhanded compliment at best, but you never know who and why people are suffering. So do you mind sharing some of you talked about gastroparesis. Is that how you say it?
Gastroparesis. Yes.
Okay.
And so, I have a few other things going on in addition to type 1, and a few of them are type 1 diabetes related. Right. So I like to remind folks that, even people that, quote unquote, take good care of themselves still end up with these complications. So I've worked really hard to move through some of the guilt and the shame that I experienced surrounding these complications, because for some time I felt, maybe I brought these onto myself. Well, if I had done better, maybe I wouldn't have all these problems. And really it's not, it's got nothing to do with that. Of course we need to take care of ourselves the best we can. But, part of the reason why I have complications is because I chose to drop my A1C too quickly. So that's something that I now speak about a lot is recovery induced complications. So if you're someone that experiences burnout or something like diabulimia, where you're intentionally omitting your insulin, if you have a high A1C and you decide that that's not the life you want to live anymore, you want to be a quote unquote good diabetic, you drop that A1C too quickly, you're going to wind up with some of the complications that you were trying to avoid in the first place. And so that's kind of what happened to me. So I ended up with gastroparesis. I had dropped my A1C from at its highest, it was 18, but I think during my hospitalization the first time, it was about 16. And so I dropped it down to under 11 or, under 10, something like that. Within 8 weeks, maybe a little longer. It was very quick drop. And I think that's what kind of brought on some of the discomfort that I was feeling, not just in my stomach with the gastroparesis, but also within my legs. So I have neuropathy. And at the same time, Perfect Storm was also going through treatment for Lyme disease. I live in New England. So it kind of was all just happening at the same time, both the A1C drop because I was in recovery from burnout and diabulimia, and also the Lyme disease. So I started experiencing gastroparesis, neuropathy. And so, for a while, it was evident, that I wasn't as healthy as could be. I was very frail and very thin for some time, potentially needing a feeding tube, which was super scary and something that, just a conversation I didn't even want to have or consider. And luckily I was able to avoid it through several different holistic healing modalities that I'm sure we'll get into, but in the meantime, I was struggling just to get back to being that normal looking person, so that I could just go about my day without having, looks of sympathy or questions of concern. And, getting to that place where you look normal, well, you really want to be there either, because then, everyone forgets. Even, nowadays, like all these years later, like when I struggle maybe with, keeping up with tasks at work on a certain day because my eyes are just bothering me, I feel bad because I don't want to, make excuses and say, well, remember, I have retinopathy and I'm going blind. I don't want to be a downer. And I also don't want to look like I'm trying to make excuses. I know we all got stuff going on. But it is hard to hear, well, you look normal, or it is hard, to not sometimes have that acknowledgement that what you go through is difficult, and that you do have to make extra efforts that maybe other people don't have to make just to get by.
Right. And so let's talk about, I can't imagine, you finally get your A1C down, and I mean, I don't hear that very often, if ever, that how quickly. I'm going to do some research on that because that blows my mind. Because the goal would be to get it down, I would think, as quickly as possible, because you want to have your blood sugar regulated or whatever. So, whoosh. Okay, so let's talk about, and I never heard this term, you are an integrative cannabis coach. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
Okay, tell me and everybody else, exactly what does that mean?
Okay, so the reason why you may never have heard that phrase before is because I kind of invented it based on my areas of expertise. So I am an integrative nutrition health coach.
Okay.
I'm certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So I did a year-long program, lots of studying, lots of tests, and became certified in holistic health. Integrative nutrition is the coined phrase through this school. And basically the idea is that, our nutrition isn't just what we consume food wise, it's also, the media that we consume, or, the other things that nourish us, like relationships or our career or our spirituality, all those other areas of life. And so when I was trying to figure out, well, what am I in this coaching world? And there are so many things that I do, but in relation to cannabis, because of how I was able to look at cannabis in a new way, I was able to integrate it into my wellness routine. So instead of it just being something that I chose to partake in recreationally, it actually became an incredible healing tool for me. Like I said, I was facing a feeding tube, really unsure about what that meant for my future, if I was going to have a surgery that was going to be invasive to my body, because even though I've been through so many different things, I still haven't, knock on wood, I've never had to have an actual surgery, which that makes me feel so grateful. Because I know that there's so much out of our control at that point with what may happen, or what the future looks like for us. So for me, it was really about just getting my own life back, getting myself back to socialization, back to work, kind of maybe how we're all feeling right now. I was stuck at home and spent, almost the entire year that I was 21 in bed. I was very sick with Lyme disease and with, some diabetes related complications. And a lot of those issues have since, improved. I'm not free of gastroparesis, but I'm able to manage it through things like cannabis. But in addition to cannabis, I also am very into other holistic healing modalities that help support the endocannabinoid system. So that's the system within our body that cannabis relates to. So even if you're not somebody that uses cannabis, you are definitely becoming exposed in other ways to cannabinoids. So in the herbs that we eat, your body actually produces endocannabinoids within your own body. So you naturally produce things that interact with this system. And so there's other ways to help support this system that don't involve, lighting a joint or eating an edible or taking a picture. You can incorporate more omega-3 fatty acids into your diet, and you're definitely supporting that system. Physical movement, physical activity. There's been so many different things that have helped me. And my goal with being an integrative cannabis coach is to help kind of shine a light on the healing benefits of cannabis, so that people can become more open-minded and more confident and comfortable about implementing this plant into their wellness routine in a therapeutic way.
Well, and it's so crazy. And so Oklahoma is where I reside, and it just got legalized for medicinal purposes about 14 months ago. And we're one of the biggest states. Like, I'm shocked that we actually got it passed, period. But it was incredible. And what it's done for our economy, there's all kinds of things. That's beside the point. That was ridiculous. But I was in Colorado, when I first started doing the blog, and we went into Durango. I was actually in Arizona. We drove into Durango for a concert or something, and I was like, I want to go to a dispensary. I want to see what this is all about, whatever. And so I go up to the counter, and I'm looking at everything, and I have seen my fair share of things in my life. But I asked, I said, hey, is there anything specific? Do you have any literature or any, because they're always, talking about the medicinal side of things. I said, is there anything related to diabetes? And the poor kid behind the counter was like, even though very educated in what was available, he was like, hold on, went to the back, came back, and had a manager or somebody, and the guy wrote something down for me. I wish I still had that sticky note. But he was like, this is the Bible of cannabis. There's got to be something in here. I don't know off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you what page, but check it out. Well, then life got busy and I forgot. So do you know what I'm talking about? It's like one big, I'm not going to say medical journal, but it's,
I have a book that's probably similar, if not the same one that this person might have been talking about. So I have a cannabis health index. So it's just like, it's literally like an encyclopedia, and you can go to any ailment, be it a headache or Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's or diabetes, and you can flip to that page and you can actually start to see some of like the research studies done. Yeah. In relation to the condition, and also, cannabis, or, whether it's CBD studies or, other cannabis related studies that include some of the other cannabinoids like, THC and the other ones that are maybe a little more psychoactive. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of research that has been done because it's been federally illegal. So to see diabetes specific research would be even more rare. However, there are some interesting studies happening in Israel. That's one of the places where some of, the most of the research, I guess you could say, is happening with cannabis. A lot of it is happening. And so there's some interesting things that is out there about cannabis and CBD specifically reducing retinal oxidative stress. So that's one of the things that I'm very much interested in at this point, being someone that's facing retinopathy, oxidative stress in general. That's something that everyone has to be in consideration of, but even more so if you have a body that is, I hate to say suffering from type 1 diabetes, but in a way being affected day in and day out by the fluctuations of our glucose levels.
I can't wait for the day when I go to my endo and they're like, okay, well, it looks like your A1C is pretty good, but we noticed this. We're going to go ahead and give you a script for cannabis. We're going to need you to go here and get this. I'd be like, wow. That'd be like one positive medication that I'd be prescribed, I guess.
Yeah. And that's really one of the reasons too, why I'm interested in kind of exploring more of the world of health coaching in relation to cannabis, and especially in relation to diabetes, because I think there is so much information that's out there, yet there's still so much that's not known. I go into the Facebook group sometimes, and I'll scroll through and see so many questions about, does anyone use CBD? Does anyone use cannabis? And I see sometimes even people giving advice like, hey, make sure you take insulin when you smoke cannabis because your blood sugar is going to go high. And I actually want to lose my mind because it's not true. Right. So that person might have some other factors going on, but actually there's plenty of evidence that cannabis helps to lower your blood sugar. Right. And that is absolutely true for me. I can see it happen on my Dexcom. So I've really enjoyed being able to be a cannabis user now that I have access to all this diabetes technology, because I'm able to kind of be my own scientist when it comes to how does this affect my blood sugar personally. And the school that I went through for my health coaching certification really celebrates being a unique individual. And the coined term is bioindividuality. And so, just recognizing that we all have our own unique needs. But there are, specific things within a cannabis plant, cannabinoids that could potentially lower blood sugar. For instance, THCV, which is one of the specific cannabinoids that can be found.
And why is it why is that? What makes that? I mean, do they obviously, if they knew, it'd be a totally different ballgame. But like,
I think my assumption is that particular chemical compound helps to increase insulin sensitivity. I don't think the THCV or anything within cannabis is necessarily lowering your blood sugar as insulin would. However, I do have a suspicion that those compounds are making the insulin that we take just work better for us. Kind of like if a type 1 person was to take like a metformin or something. And again, keeping in mind, I am a holistic health coach. I'm not a scientist or a doctor or, a nurse.
We're not providing medical advice. We're just sharing,
this isn't necessarily medical advice. As a coach, I'm able to help guide people to be more comfortable and maybe figure out the questions that they might have. And, it's really about accountability when it comes to, setting our other health related goals. So that's where the integrative part comes in. So just kind of integrating it into the other aspects of our life. because I strongly believe, that it's not just one thing that's going to help us. So that's really what set me on the path for so many of the other healing modalities that I rely on, was that, at a time when I really couldn't function, I couldn't get out of bed, I couldn't eat, I could barely walk, cannabis was there for me. And when I started to feel better, when I got myself up to that baseline where I was able to make some more decisions for my health, I did start to explore some of the more natural ways to take care of myself, because a plant was the thing that helped me. And I really felt like, nature calls, right? So, and I've always been that kind of way anyways. I've been very outdoorsy and very much into natural things since I was very young. That's all I can remember. And I've been told, in the past life, you've been a shaman, or, whatever they want to say to you. But, you got to wonder, it's like, why do I have, such a desire to not use prescription medications if there's another way for myself? And luckily, I was on, gosh, I can't even tell you how many pills, and I don't take any of them now. And and within that first year of them being prescribed to me, I knew, I said, this isn't right. I don't want this. Yeah. I want more for myself than just popping pills. I'm only 21 years old. And so yoga and things like Reiki and even just a simple mindfulness practice as a way to deal with some of the anxiety and stress that I was feeling about life, but also that I was feeling about these complications that were making their way into the world. It's a lot to deal with. It's a lot.
And you said in the very beginning, a lot of us with type 1 live with guilt and shame. And so it's like, there's so much. Okay. And so with that guilt and shame, then you're pressing, in my mind, your soul, your higher being down. Well, what is that doing? That's in my mind. And I'm going to get all hippie-ish, but like that affects your gut. I mean, so then when it affects your gut, then you're going to have acid reflux, then you're going to have to take a pill, and all these things are interchanged. And so it's like, what I've chosen is, a different diet. There are certain things that I chose to remove from my diet when I was 14, just because there was another thing there. And I love the fact that when we talk about cannabis or whatever, meditation for me is huge, that's a tool in my tool belt. And it's going to help better manage my diabetes. And I can promise you, where most of, a doctor's not going to prescribe meditation. He can encourage you maybe to exercise more, or what does that look like? And I hope that we see that change. But yeah, you got to do some different things, and non-traditional, I would say, I guess. So kudos on you for really exploring those paths and for sharing that with, you've got a podcast, you've got all kinds of stuff. So let's go into a little bit about your community involvement and what resources you're providing the T1D community right now.
Sure. Yeah. I lead a group for women online. We've been meeting for about a year now. I was really inspired after the Slipstream experience that I went to last year up in Maine. I was able to share yoga and connect with some of the people that were present for the weekend. And I was really feeling like, how do we stay in touch? We're all so far away from each other. And I had been leading peer support groups in the Boston area since 2013. And just was finding that I couldn't really fit it into my day-to-day schedule anymore to get to a location and to be prepared and present for these people. So before all this Zoom stuff happened this year, last summer I was hosting monthly Zoom meetups for women with diabetes. And at first I had this idea that I wanted to make it, more about yoga and meditation and maybe spirituality, but I was a little hesitant to label it as such. And so we really just started to explore kind of the internal world, thinking of mental health, thinking of our mental wellness, and, some of the harder things that we maybe go through as women with diabetes, things like, depression or addiction or PTSD or, anxiety, eating disorders, that sort of thing. Because really, when I formed the group, I thought, who am I? What are the labels that I would give myself? What have I been through? And kind of like creating that almost like avatar of like, who do you want to call in? Well, I want to call in women like me. So that's what I did. And we founded Grace and Growth last June and started meeting. And now we meet actually pretty regularly these days since we're all home. We kicked it back off in March with weekly meetings. So now instead of once a month, we're meeting once a week. we meet Wednesday nights, and we call it the garden. So this meeting it's like the secret garden, not recorded, very private, and actually we choose to keep those conversations closed. So what we talk about with each other in the garden doesn't even come back into the Facebook group. So It's really a unique opportunity for whoever is able to be present to really share and experience that community connection with each other in that space. And then on Fridays, we have a live podcast recording. So it's really just another opportunity to get together on Zoom, and I bring in a guest for what we call grow and tell. So back to like kindergarten, we all find different ways to grow. So I like to highlight some of the members of the group, anyone that has an interesting story to tell, anyone that is feeling like they want to share their story. As I said, so many, we all have a story, and each story is unique and beautiful. So we've been doing that, and I figured, why not just press record and throw it up on YouTube? So it's really now become a podcast format. That way, not only does it have the potential to reach other women with diabetes, but maybe just people in general, men with diabetes, but maybe people that don't have diabetes. Medical providers might be able to see these episodes and hear more about our unique experiences as well. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for with that.
Can you give me an example of maybe one of the topics that is brought up in the garden?
Sure. So, this past week, we talked a lot about some of the anxieties that we're feeling surrounding being home during this time, and struggling to find ways to take care of ourselves when there's so much demand from, our workplaces and our families. I'm not the only person in the group that doesn't have children, but many people do. A lot of the women have kids that are coming to these meetings. And so just really kind of sharing in the different experiences of the different women that are present. It's really, it's all about whoever's on the call.
Yeah. Do you feel like, it's a group, I'm going to say this and correct me if it's not correct terminology, but it's kind of like group therapy, because it's an open dialogue. You get to feed off of each other, or feed off of each other essentially. So when you leave, or when you shut that down at the end of the session or whatever, you take a deep breath and it's like a huge weight is off your shoulders? Or now do you feel like you're wearing the weight of those people because somebody might have shared something like they were suicidal or, really struggling? So yeah, how do you handle that as a host?
That's a great question. And actually, we've been having a little moment of meditation at the end of our garden meetups. And what's been really joyful for me is that I've invited other women to share the meditation. So it's not me that's leading it, which is really a treat for me as well to be able to experience that meditation from a friend. But also, when I approach that space and when I approach this project, it's really out of service for others. So recognizing my own opportunity to just kind of plug into that space as somebody that can help facilitate some of the connections between women. I definitely have a lot of ways that I check in with myself and make sure that I'm feeling okay. But at the end of the day, I really just try to remember that, I'm here to hold space for these women to come in and to share what they need to share. And at the same time, they're holding space for me. Right. So it's not like, I feel like I'm like the shepherd tending to the flock. Yeah. I love that I also get to participate as equally as much a member of the garden as I am, the person that maybe hosted or put it on or founded it.
Right. Well, I want to go back to Slipstream just for a second. Because I know what it is, and I've not participated. I think maybe because I feel a little too old. I may be too old.
No, you're not.
Maybe in the beginning I thought there was an age limit, but I remember seeing Paloma last year participating, and I was like, girl, if she can go out there and do that, I can do it, because I'm not an outdoorsy person necessarily. But tell me, so you participated last year, but now this year you were actually teaching, and doing other things, and obviously it's virtual now. And can you talk to that and like maybe what's coming up?
Sure. Yeah, I had the pleasure of teaching last year as well up in Maine, Lakeside. It was so beautiful, and I shared this weekend during the virtual Slipstream that really Slipstream has meant so much to me throughout these years, because my first year attending the Maine Slipstream, yoga was actually led by Lauren Bongiorno.
Yeah.
Is just a delight. I mean, and such an important person within my diabetes journey. It's awesome to have someone younger than you to look up to. That's a cool thing, because he is younger than me, and we've been able to form a friendship. And actually, I shared this weekend that I skipped my yoga teacher training graduation. It's the only session that I missed in the entire program because I wanted to be at Slipstream. And I knew that I had to be there. So this program that I had diligently made sure I didn't miss 1 minute of for an entire 8 months, I said, whatever, I'm going to Maine. And, the next year was able to come back and teach by the lake and to connect with the people. And then now this full year later, we're not able to attend together in person, but I was able to share yoga from my home this past weekend. And it brought tears to my eyes when I started talking about how much it meant to me, because, I have missed teaching, being home,
Right.
and teaching people with diabetes is the reason I became a yoga teacher anyways. I'm not,
Right.
I can't necessarily do every single yoga posture in the book, whatever, if you wanted to say that there was a book with all the postures.
Right.
There's so much, I can't do, but instead of focusing on the things that I couldn't do, I chose to focus on the things that I could do. And I knew that because of the other work that I was doing within the diabetes world, inevitably, I was going to find people who were interested in how yoga has helped me and my complications. So I thought, the best thing that I can do is go through a program so that when I share about yoga, I can do it from a place that's really informed and really knowledgeable. And what I soon realized was that, I have such a connection and a passion for yoga, and not just the physical movements of yoga, but really the lifestyle, the philosophy. I love studying the sacred wisdom literature from India. I really feel strongly about the messages that I receive from the community that I'm a part of. I'm part of a Bhakti yoga community, and it's just, that's the yoga of love and devotion. And it's of service, that's really what it's all about, is of serving God, but also serving each other and really showing that love and that kindness. And that's, how I see my work in the diabetes world. It's really about being of service to others, even on, days when I'm not sure, why is this girl who, can't answer emails on time or, do all the stuff, like, how are you trying to run these meetings? And it's like, well, if you didn't, this wouldn't exist. And maybe someone needs to find this. So I just do the best that I can each and every day. And I hope that, I'll be blessed to continue doing this work for many, many years to come.
Well, and I applaud your efforts and everybody that's putting themselves out there, because, you're vulnerable, you're real. And that's, I feel like other people with type 1, that's what we need, is we need somebody, A, to lean on, B, to look up to at times. And also that you're not scared about talking about walking the walk and what all you've done throughout your life, the good and the bad, that brought you to this point, because none of us are perfect. We're perfectly imperfect. And what does that look like? So if you were to give, and maybe this is too blank of a statement, but 4 things that are part of your, I'm going to say daily, weekly routine that help you stay grounded with your diabetes. And whether that's physical, like, of course, you give your insulin or whatever, but like I would say for me, it's meditation. I go on a 45-minute long walk. What does that look like? Or even some days it's my meditation is cooking, because I'm going to take my mind off things and just focus on what I'm about to put in my body. So yeah, if you have anything to add, to throw to that, what do you do? We're all looking for tips.
Sure. Well, I guess, one of the obvious ones would be yoga. And right. Like I said, not just the physical movement of yoga, but but the community that I'm a part of. So many mornings I wake up at 5 o'clock, a little earlier, and I listen to a Zoom call podcast that's all about, it's called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's one of the sacred texts from India, and the hosts, they share a small passage and kind of what it means to them. And I find the wisdom that I get from that podcast and from that book to be so helpful as I head into my day, to the point where if I don't wake up early, I actually didn't wake up this morning for it. So I have my iPad here. I just watched it before the call with you. I feel like I missed out on something. So really setting the tone for my day with that yoga philosophy is really helpful for me.
And it's 5 a.m. there, so that would mean that it would be 4 a.m. for me. I want to participate, but that is tough. Maybe so I can go back to it. I could look. I could tune in at 8 or whatever.
Absolutely, they put it up on YouTube, and actually on the weekends they do it at 8 a.m. Eastern time, so it's a little later on the weekends. Luckily, Sleep Saturday they call it. But I really love having that kind of as the start of my day. And if it's not necessarily the podcast, say I'm waking up later, just having time, before the cell phone action, before the TV turns on, just really honoring kind of that sacred time of the morning, whether that means, grabbing my journal, maybe journaling a little bit. I really love tarot and astrology. So, I'll maybe pull a few tarot cards. I might check out. So I have like, a calendar, whatever, a planner, I guess you'd call it. I'm like, what are those things called again? I'm stuck in my home, not even using it, right? Because I have no things to
nowhere to go.
So I have a planner that actually is unique to my own natal chart and the astrology exactly where I live here, just south of Boston. So I check in kind of with like the astrology forecast of the day, so I can kind of think about some of the energy that I might be working with. And then moving into my day, I may choose to use some cannabis in the morning if I'm not feeling very well, but typically, I try to limit the amount of cannabis I'm using during the day, just so that I can, stay on task and stay focused. Though there are certainly different products that I can choose that actually keep me more focused. So really knowing what I'm using and being that informed cannabis consumer allows me to kind of pick and choose when and where I need to use my medicine. But beyond that, I would say time with my dogs. So I have two dogs. So I would say time with my dogs. I have an older dog she'll be 17 this year. She's twinkling around right now, her little toenails. She's very old, and that is so hard these days, but just grateful for every moment with her. And then my younger dog was actually trained as a diabetic alert dog. So he is super special to me, and we have such an amazing bond. I love him. His name is Hawkeye. And really, what Hawkeye does for me is he really allows me to have a new kind of motivation for my diabetes management, because, when I got him, I had an understanding that if I were to have this animal and I'm trying to keep him on task, I owe it to him to keep my blood sugars as balanced as I can, because I don't want to confuse him. And I also don't want to waste all the wonderful time and training that he's had.
Right.
So when I got Hawkeye, it was like, I was honeymooning again, not the diabetes honeymoon, I guess, but like that kind of feeling of like, everything's great. Like this is, there was like a novelty, I guess, to my diabetes management once again, because I had this dog that was helping me. And, we ended up moving home from an apartment that we were in when I first got him, and we lived with my parents for some time, which he was spoiled a little bit by them. So we're working on, refreshing some of his skills. And really when I got him, it was so that I could learn how these dogs are trained. It wasn't so much that I thought, I need one for my health and safety, though it's obviously an amazing benefit and such a privilege to be able to have an animal like him. It was really so that maybe someday when I have a house and some land, I can train these dogs and just give them away for free.
Yeah, because they're not cheap.
No.
God, it's so crazy. Well, I'm glad. And so Hawkeye is how old?
Hawkeye will be 7 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't believe
it's your baby. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. And that's, see why your parents spoil him. It's their grandbaby. I mean, yeah. So does Hawkeye we could do a whole other podcast just about having a diabetes alert dog, but what are there differences is how he approaches you between the lows and highs?
Sure. So he actually, he was a started dog. So he spent the first 18 years, 18 months, the first 18 months of his life were spent being trained in North Carolina, where he's from.
Yeah.
And so the story goes was that the trainer was training 2 other standard size poodles at the time that were already promised to families. People had put deposits down, blah, blah, blah. So she was really focusing on those 2 dogs. And I think Hawkeye, he was maybe in the running for becoming a father dog, not a dad, because we know dad is diabetic alert dog, like a daddy, because I actually met his actual father. His father is named Spanky, and he's very cute. And I think maybe it was decided that he wasn't going to be a father dog to the new puppies to be bred. So she started doing some of the low training with him, but then was focusing on the poodles that were promised. So
right.
he knows lows. He was not trained by anyone else besides me with highs.
Okay.
So I would say that is definitely where he is not as strong, would be on the high end. Especially since I do feel like with my gastroparesis and stuff too, like I tend to go higher maybe more often than the average.
Yeah.
I guess that's a silly thing to say. Who knows how many people are going high out there for whatever reason, but he's pretty good with lows, and really, I mean, the amount of times that he has woken me up in the night, he doesn't have one of those, I think they're called like bring sauls or something like that, where they like have like a little stick and they bring over the stick, and like the stick is like the magic stick that tells you the low is happening. Hawkeye's more of like here's my paw, like, hey, I'm going to be all about you right now.
Yeah.
And really that's because, my experience as a dog trainer is very, very limited. So it was the training that he received prior to him being my dog down in North Carolina, and then what we've been able to accomplish up this way. But yeah, they're fascinating what these animals can do. And
it's crazy. And, when you see all the time on social media that dogs and cats that aren't trained can pick up on these things. And that blows my mind. I was with a woman whose daughter has a diabetes alert dog, and the daughter didn't take it to school with her that day for whatever reason. We were sitting with each other, and the dog just walks up to me and just starts nudging me and puts his paw on my blood sugar was high, and I was like, and it was crazy. The dog would not stop until my blood sugar went down. I was like, I promise, I've got insulin on board. I've got this, but for a kid, they're saving lives. There's no doubt that. And with the technology, hopefully we won't hear about kids dying in their sleep. So.
Yeah. And with him, he's got some anxiety issues and stuff too. So originally I had thought that I would maybe hire someone that would help me kind of finish his training. But with him, once I got to know him a little bit more, I realized, it's okay for us to be the team that we are.
Yeah.
There's a reason, even spiritual reasons, I feel he entered my life. So I'm like, even if you're not catching every single low and, whatever. And I don't really, it's not like I'm taking him, when I travel, I travel to diabetes conferences and get on airplanes. I don't take him with me. It's not, it's not like I have him at all times, going to Target or, luckily my regular job is pretty dog friendly in general. So he does come to work with me every day. And I do feel so lucky for that. To have my dog under my desk all day long is pretty rad. I'm like, well, if you have diabetes and this is what you get a dog though, that's okay by me.
Right. Well,
so he really is an anchor of comfort for me for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's good. And that's another part of I'm going to say diabetes management, that's a therapy tool. I mean, loving on a pet.
Yeah. And when I have a gastroparesis flare up, especially if I'm at work or if I'm in public, and this isn't what he was trained to do, but if I don't feel well and I'm very nauseous and even if I'm going to be sick, I can just get down on the ground with him and I put my head into his fur and I pet him and he just lets me love him. And it helps. So I'm like, this was not the original intention. And I know if my diabetes check-in alarm goes off at 5:55, this wasn't the original intention for Hawkeye, but he's been able to provide me with so much love and comfort for other reasons too.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, we could sit and talk for hours because you're a very fascinating person, and I applaud your vulnerability and being able to talk about all these things, and not many people can, and I'm glad that we're talking about this because everybody with diabetes is curious and wants to learn from other people, and cannabis, being an integrative cannabis, let me make sure I say that right, integrative cannabis coach. I mean, I like making up my own titles, and I think I need to make up one for myself. I don't know what that is yet, but Sarah, thank you so much for taking time and for all of your activism and all the community work that you're doing, because you are really helping people, and you never know how many people you actually touch. It's kind of crazy. So we will definitely have a follow-up episode in the future, and everything we've talked about, listeners, there will be links in the show notes. I definitely want the one about the Indian, you pronounced it so beautifully.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
I'm going to need you to send me a Facebook message with a link to that, because I would never.
Yes.
But I appreciate all of your tips. So enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds
all right.
Good. Thanks, Amber. This was so much fun.
Have a good day.
I really dig Sarah's energy and applaud everything she's doing for the diabetes community. Good on you, Sarah, and keep doing what you're doing. We need more people like you. Before I wrap up, I have a few last-minute things I'd like to share. Number 1, this episode was brought to you by Gottlieb, CBD-infused self-care products. Be sure to use the discount code DDG25 when placing your order. You get a pretty sweet discount. Number 2, I want to thank the medical community for doing everything they can to help us stay safe. Grocery delivery services for allowing us to stay home. Local restaurants for delivering good food to my door. And fellow advocacy groups for providing valuable resources during this time. Thank you from the bottom of my T1D heart. Number 3, the mini podcast series featuring brands, services, and organizations I believe mirror my mission can be found on the website and all podcast platforms. If you'd like to learn more about how you can have your own mini podcast episode, please shoot an email to Penelope@diabetesdailygrind.com. And finally, please continue to leave iTunes reviews and love, like, and share all things social media. If you want to contact me directly, I can always be reached at amber@diabetesdailygrind.com. And getting a message from you, as I always say, makes my heart happy and keeps the episodes coming. All right, everybody, stay safe. Cheers to the highs and lows.